someone please tell me what the hell is going on here?
So we finally had a glimpse of Resident Evil Village's gameplay, thanks to the recent RE showcase. And we've even been able to visit Village's castle ourselves, thanks to RE Village's creepy and atmospheric maiden demo on PS5. Honestly, we can't get enough of this new classic gothic horror direction. Sexy vampires, werewolves, and spooky castles that must be a nightmare to heat are very much our vibe right now. But what does all this new info actually tell us about the overarching story of Resident Evil Village? Or even what's going on in the Resident Evil timeline as a whole? It's time to theorize. Let's break it down, shall we?
So we finally
Here's the story of Resident Evil Village as we know it so far. Set a few years after the events of Resident Evil 7, you play once again as Ethan Winters. He and his wife Mia have been living peacefully in a new location, apparently under the protection of the BSAA, trying to build a new life together. But then, all of a sudden, as it tends to do in horror games, tragedy befalls them once again. It seems that, according to descriptions on the Resident Evil Village official website, BSAA Captain Chris Redfield attacks their home. In footage shown in an early trailer, it appears that Chris Redfield actually murders Mia. Then, he kidnaps Ethan and Mia's daughter, whose name is Rosemary. The plot then would seem to focus on Ethan getting his daughter back, which means he must travel to an isolated village in Eastern Europe.
The castle bell heralds danger. The bell tolls for us all. They're coming again!
So why does Chris Redfield turn on the BSAA and Ethan? Chris has been one of the central heroes of the Resident Evil series from the very beginning. He's a former STARS member, has saved the world on numerous occasions, and for the last few entries in the series has worked directly for the BSAA, a sort of counter to evil bioterrorism organisation Umbrella, the threat behind basically all of the Resident Evil games. He descended from a helicopter at the end of Resident Evil 7 bearing the blue Umbrella symbol, belonging to the Umbrella Corporation. A confusingly named outfit designed to clean up the mess the Red Umbrella conglomerate had started, and it worked with the BSAA in achieving this. They were the good guys, in other words, so it doesn't make sense that they would suddenly turn on a family they had placed in protection. But something is different about Chris, and new artwork unveiled for the game seems to suggest that he's not just gone rogue, but maybe feral too. Has Chris somehow been compromised or turned into a werewolf? I mean, this would imply it, as with the fact that the base of his collector's edition statue also features a wolf. For reference, previous collector's editions for the Resident Evil 2 remake and the Resident Evil 3 remake had Leon and Jill standing on top of the RPD and STARS logos respectively, collectives that their characters are inextricably tied to. It could mean werewolf lineage, it could mean werewolf alliance, or it could just mean he's become a bit of a lone wolf. But one thing's for sure, Chris has a plan.
They're coming. Who is?
Is Ethan's baby daughter Rosemary, or Rose, important to that plan, or is Ethan himself? I mean, what advantage could regular nobody Ethan, as Capcom describes him, possibly have over actual trained military operative Chris? Did Chris take the baby knowing that Ethan would follow him? Is the fact that Ethan has previously been exposed to a bioweapon strain key here? Or is it actually the fact that Mia was exposed and infected by the E-type strain via Evelyn and has since had a child, one that might be incubating a virus that has mutated even further? Okay, let's park those questions for a second. What does any of that have to do with a village way out in the middle of nowhere in Eastern Europe? Well, it seems that the entire area is prone to ancient rituals, has a taste for the occult, and has a number of gothic monsters at its doorstep. We think there might be a reason for that. On the official site, Capcom includes an image that shows a part of the castle with various family crests on the wall. These are labelled as House Dimitrescu, House Beneviento, House Moreau, and House Heisenberg. Taken on its own, this information means very little. But after watching the latest footage from the game previewed at the RE Showcase, and after playing the Resident Evil Village demo titled Maiden, things start to make a bit more sense. For example, the tall lady glimpsed in several trailers that the internet is currently falling in love with, her name is Alcina Dimitrescu, and the castle is her home. Within its walls, she and her daughters imprison young women, and if the notes you find in the Maiden demo are to be believed, they create a uniquely flavoured wine with their blood. The lady and her daughters all display classic vampiric qualities, and they also display abilities not a million miles away from Marguerite Baker's in RE7, namely the ability to control or turn into swarms of insects. The symbol of this house, Dimitrescu, glimpsed in the crest, on wine bottles and doors, and even on the lady herself, is a flower. Now, this may be a little out there, but this flower bears a tiny resemblance to the Stairway to the Sunflowers featured in Resident Evil 5, the flowering plant native to West Africa that, under certain conditions, cultivated the progenitor virus. Is it possible that this flower, or at least a similar type of flower, is where the ancient Dimitrescu family draws its vampiric strength? Now let's take a look at the other crests. We don't know much about House Beneviento and House Moreau just yet, but we have heard the name Heisenberg before. The tall lady, Alcina, mentions him directly.
Mother Miranda, I regret to inform you that Ethan Winters has escaped that fool Heisenberg.
And mentions that Ethan managed to escape him, presumably in the village itself, before making his way to the castle. Later, when confronting Ethan, Alcina says,
"You escaped my little brother's idiot games, did you?"
So that leads us to believe that Heisenberg is regarded on some level as her brother, and so the houses are somehow linked in a familial way. This character, who we've glimpsed in a few trailers, could be Heisenberg. And don't ask us why, but he does look like a Heisenberg. Plus, in this clip, it looks like he and Ethan are gearing up for a boss fight. This character also carries a large hammer/mace type thing that some of the Lycan figures elsewhere in the presentation wield. So let's say for a second that House Dimitrescu represents vampires and House Heisenberg potentially represents werewolves. We're not sure how their symbol of a horse and horseshoe fits into that theory just yet, but let's go with it. Could the other two houses represent other monsters and therefore other mutations of DNA-altering viral strains? House Moreau seems to have a connection to water, and House Beneviento's symbol falls back on shapes we've seen before in the RE series. But anyway, every time we've seen these four crests in shots from the game, they're all linked by one thing: the umbrella logo. Chris may be leading Ethan to Eastern Europe in an attempt to go back to the very beginning of where, how, and why Umbrella was created. And it's possible that either Ethan or baby Rose have a starring role in whatever ceremony the families have planned. The Mother Miranda that Alcina speaks to on the phone in this scene may be the matriarch of either House Beneviento or House Moreau, or maybe she's someone else entirely. It may be her voice that we hear here.
The bell tolls for us all. They're coming again.
Could the other two families be connected to witches, trolls? I guess we'll find out. But them seeking out a special child isn't exactly surprising. The Resident Evil series has always made a point of making children hosts of deadly virus strains or evil intent. See Lisa Trevor, Sherry Birkin, Natalia Corda in Resident Evil Revelations, Evelyn in Resident Evil 7, and there is an entire network of child experimentation going on in the newly added orphanage sequence in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Clearly, evil organizations and cults believe children to be the perfect conduits for these bioweapons. And maybe it's a practice going back to the inception of Umbrella. This symbol has appeared on screenshots, videos, and pretty much every piece of marketing for Village. And Capcom says it's incredibly important to the story, to the point that the development team think that it might give away too much. I mean, it just looks like a kind of mutated fetus surrounded by bird wings. But could it also be the original Umbrella logo, or where the design for the Umbrella logo came from? It might be that with Resident Evil Village, we're getting an Umbrella origin story, one that predates the Spencer family and explores its legacy and ancestry, dating right back to these 4 ancient houses who each represent older, more classic horror archetypes, with each one tying into a different bioweapon strain that we've encountered at one point or another in the timeline of Resident Evil. Maybe. Something to ponder over at least. All that aside, Village looks very impressive, and the throwbacks and references to Resident Evil 4 get more numerous by the day. Not only do we have a European village setting that then moves to a castle area, we have a new merchant. One that'll be selling us healing items, ammo and grenades, weapons and weapon upgrades, and buying trinkets from us that we find in the local area. According to Capcom, this merchant, the Duke, will be just like the original merchant in that he'll show up at specific locations in order for Ethan to peruse his wares. And it sounds like our reputation precedes us.
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters.
How do you know my name?
Anyone who is anyone has heard of the likes of you.
Echoing RE4 even further is the return of the attaché case inventory system. So look forward to beautifully arranged, perfectly symmetrical suitcases filled with as many guns as we can carry. Although now we get the added bonus of being able to craft resources too. All of these callbacks to RE4 are interesting though. We're in a different part of Europe, but everything else about this whole setup, a kidnapped young woman, cultist locals, evil aristocracy, is super familiar. Is there a thematic reason that Capcom is clearly drawing on the aesthetics of 4? Is there a deeper lore connection at work here? Well, regardless, it seems like each area of Village will be divided up according to these family crests, and behind each family will likely be a memorable boss character. With the one section we can pretty much count as confirmed being that the castle is ruled over by Lady Alcina, who has fans a little hot under the collar. It's me. I'm fans. No thanks. No thanks. No thanks. No thank you. No thank you. No ma'am. Actually, I'm kind of okay with that. Oh, no, I'm not. No. Fucking. Oh.
So we
Ma'am. It's just a little tighter. Oh, fuck. Freddy Krueger got sexy. One thing we will say, after there really only being a single enemy type in Resident Evil 7 outside of the bosses, it's nice to see a lot of variation of enemies in Village already. You have these thralls wielding quite ornate old weaponry, you have smaller lycans and giant werewolves, you have sexy vampires that are also a swarm of bees. We're in for a good time. At least where these ladies are concerned, I for one look forward to being terrorized and in love at the same time. So we have a release date for Resident Evil Village, May the 7th. But hopefully we'll get a little more info on the story before then. Do you have any theories of your own on why Chris is in the kidnapping babies business? On what role these families will play? Or on why Capcom is set on making literally everyone thirsty for their main villains in this one? Let us know in the comments and check out one of our other videos while you wait. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. Bye!
Well, Ethan Winters. There you are.